Did you already?
No. I distracted you with my talk.
You totally did.
Welcome to Movie Boners.
Welcome, everybody.
I have a pretty dark beer today. So I was gonna. I went into not dark the color, dark as in dark themed, dark comedy, dark.
Okay.
I went in. I was gonna get something ice cream related, ice cream or pie or something that you could put ice cream on, and I couldn't find anything. So I found this one. It's from the Loveland Ale Works. It's a very fine ale company right next door here, and it's called Death Wobble. And there is a lot of death in the movie we're talking about today. It's a imperial porter brewed with coffee. So,
all right. I could not find one that I felt really fit the movie, so I just grabbed one to enjoy.
Good call.
Since I really enjoyed the beer that I had last week from St. Arnold, I have another one from them. It's called Headliner, and it's a blonde ale.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty good.
Headliner's a cool name. Here's my
it's like
label.
Mid-90s out here, so that's a cool can.
Yeah.
So this feels suitable. It's like you got the condensation. It's a summer beer.
Yeah.
So many summer beers.
Yeah, it's a good season.
Which, I'm sure in the summertime, Alabama gets really hot as well. So
yeah, it's very similar to your environment. It's fun to tease it.
It is.
So today we're talking about quite possibly my absolute favorite movie, and I know that you love it as well.
Oh my God!
Although I have probably at least a dozen favorite movies, so it's hard to choose.
But I'm excited for this one because I know after the MCU episodes, I got a little long-winded. People are over it. I love those movies.
Yeah.
But I felt it was time, and you were due to have your showcase. This is my movie, and I know Forrest Gump is. I think even your wife agrees with this.
Yeah.
That Forrest Gump might actually is your all-time favorite.
It is. It's one of it's definitely probably my all-time favorite. It's probably one of the best movies ever made, and I will have a lot to say about it. As I was going into this, I always kind of look at the patterns of how we're doing things, and I thought it was kind of funny that a while ago we did some deep dives into some pretty lesser-known niche thriller movies. And then we did some extremely popular modern movies. And now we're doing just a classic 90s movie.
Well, and even though it came out in 94, I feel like Forrest Gump, especially after watching it again, it's one of those movies that just ages perfectly because it doesn't necessarily age.
Yeah.
It's supposed to take place in the 90s or in the late 80s. It's supposed to that's when it's set.
Right. It's pretty timeless for that reason. I think it will hold up for a very long time.
And I'm still, every time I watch it, still blown away of man, the CGI work that was done in Forrest Gump is so good.
Yeah. It may be one of my one of my favorite visual effects movies because it's so subtle that it's not over the top and it's not crazy, and they didn't try anything too ridiculous, but they did just enough to make it believable and make it fit, and it holds up so well. You don't notice it that much.
It really does. Yeah. So I've been looking forward to this episode since we decided this one. Rewatching it, I know last week when you and I talked about it, I was like, it'll be fun to watch the movie that makes every grown man just weep and it just beats you down.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
But rewatching it, I was there's a couple parts that they were starting to show up and I was like, man, every time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I watched it this week as well again, and There are several times I was like, I'm getting a little misty right now.
Damn you, Tom Hanks! Damn you!
Yeah, it's a very powerful movie. I think it's a movie that's very well known, that has done a really good job of kind of penetrating the culture, because
Yeah.
you know probably a dozen different lines from this movie, even if you've never seen it. But I think it's still worth seeing, even if you feel like you've heard all the lines and you've seen the clips, and
Oh, 100%.
you have to experience it and see it.
Because, yeah, the movie as a whole, what that character's life for, 12 years or whatever it is, or 30 years from childhood to his 30s. It's just so incredible. I was talking to my daughter about it because we set up like a whole watch list. We're going to do like mystery movie polls together. And where we're just going to reach in a hat and pull out whatever movie we pull out.
Okay.
Like, that's what we're going to watch. But that kind of stemmed from her and I talking about Forrest Gump. And describing the movie to a child is kind of interesting. And I know we saw it as children.
Yeah.
We were pretty young when we saw it.
I saw it saw parts of it. I remember seeing it for the very first time at a friend's house. And I didn't see the whole movie. His parents had rented it, and we were supposed to go to bed, and we had kind of, I guess, snuck out in the living room and saw it on TV. And I remember seeing this woman sitting on stage playing the guitar, singing a song. Yeah. I was like, this is nice. And then she stands up and she's naked. I was like, this movie's going to stick with me for a long time. And then I eventually saw the real movie, and I was like, oh, this is that movie.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know how to follow that up. Describing it because I did see it when I was young. You know, my family and we always rented like one or two movies. Well, it was always two.
Yeah.
A movie for them and a movie for me, right?
For sure.
And we would always watch the movie for me first. And then it was, okay, mom and dad are watching this movie. 9 out of 10 times I would be allowed to sit and watch it with them. And Forrest Gump was one of those where the mentality was like, oh, it's Tom Hanks. So it's automatically like appropriate for all ages, which is kind of funny that Tom Hanks
your parents never saw Bachelor Party.
Right. And it's like somehow Tom Hanks has just created that, like, if his name is on a bill, he's good for all ages. Like, anyone can watch it. You're good.
Yeah.
Not always the case. So, yeah, Bachelor Party.
Oh, man.
Or what's the one where he plays the guy going to the Greenpeace?
To the Greenpeace.
Oh, man.
Is it older?
Yeah, it's with him and I want to say John Candy. Oh,
I don't know if I've seen it.
No? That one's
so.
Also not necessarily an appropriate Tom Hanks.
Okay.
Anyways.
I'll take a note for that.
I remember watching it and not getting some of the more adult-themed jokes or content, actually.
Yeah.
Because the movie has so much to it. But it always stuck with me as a kid because it just, there's something about his story and the way they tell it that's really good.
It's called Volunteers.
Yeah, Volunteers. That's also not an appropriate Tom Hanks movie.
I like the cover a lot. It looks really cool.
I was just trying to look it up too.
I was on IMDb. I was like, I'll just look it up.
Yep. So I'm trying to describe it to my daughter. And I'm telling her, like, all right, so it's the whole movie is this guy just telling his life story. Not because anyone asked, but because he's just like the sweetest character ever. He's like genuinely like approachable, sociable, happy, even during the bad times. His perspective is very different. And so I'm trying to tell her, and then I told her, like, and he's also kind of like mentally challenged, you know, he's kind of slow, he, you know, struggles, but he never like complains about that. It's never used as like a crutch. And so I was just telling her, you know, he goes through, he fights in a war, he plays ping pong for the government, like
meets a lot of celebrities,
meets a lot of big names, presidents and whatnot. And we'll get to it, but I love him meeting presidents. It's so good. But just like as I was describing it to her, it was one of those where it started to really also, again, sink into me of like, this movie, the character, very relevant, and maybe we should all be taking serious notes from it on how we perceive the world around us or what's happening in our lives. So I was like, oh my God, if I watch this movie with her, I'm probably going to choke up even more or worse than I normally do on my own, but it's still on the watch list. Nice. But yeah, it was like, it's one of those movies that, for as old as it is, you called it a classic, which it is. Man, it's so like still powerful, which is pretty cool that it has maintained the social impact that it created even when it came out. I know everyone knows the famous 2 lines, you know, run Forrest run, life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
I remember that line being completely ruined for me.
Yeah.
Someone pointed out that on the bottom of the box of chocolates, it always tells you what's actually in the box. And I was like, that line sucks.
Maybe they didn't invent that until like the 90s, not in the
right. Well, and then that's my justification watching it this week because, you know, the opening shows up and he says it. And I was like, oh, there's that line. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. This is like 1980 something.
Yeah. And when his mom told him that was back in like the 50s or 60s or something.
Yeah. I'm like, they didn't have the chocolates listed on the box. Nah, the line still holds up.
Yeah. Yeah. It works. It's a very well thought out movie. Like you said, it's the kind of movie that has a really awesome message, and it's so subtle about how that message comes across. It's not really the kind of movie that you feel sets out to make a message, like is building the whole movie around beating you over the head with this message kind of thing.
Oh, right.
It just kind of happens. Like it just kind of has everything in his life kind of happens. And he has a really great attitude about just going with the flow and just kind of like, well, this is what I do next because this is what's happening in life, and I'll accept it and I'll do it and make friends along the way and treat everybody nicely. Yeah. And then you kind of get to the end and you're greeted with the message and you're like, oh wow, this is amazing. So it's one of those movies that's really kind of, I mean, it has very serious themes and it does get pretty deep and dark, but it's also at the same time very gentle, and I always feel better when I watch it.
Right. Even after like the last 20 minutes, just
yeah, exactly. So yeah,
let's dive into this.
Let's spoil the crap out of it. So if you haven't seen it, that should have been your cue to go see it finally. This is a great movie.
If you have not seen Forrest Gump and you are over the age of like 13, your parents have failed you, and go watch it because it's an important movie. It's so good.
It's amazing. All right.
Well, so, Jake, this is your showcase. So,
am I driving this ship?
Yeah.
Are you going to be my first mate?
I'll try.
All right. So first off, Robert Zemeckis movies in general, always amazing. Zemeckis is a great director, and I do love everything he does. I've never read the novel it's based on. You read a lot more than me. I don't know if you did.
No.
But the screenplay was adapted by Eric Roth, who's written a lot of movies that I love, obviously. The Postman, Horse Whisperer, Munich, Ali, The Good Shepherd. So he's a pretty bomb.com, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, all that stuff. Pretty bomb.com writer. And it comes across, I think. I really love the writing in this movie, especially primarily because of the dialogue. So the way that the dialogue's written, the way that Forrest Gump says the phrases that he says, his phrasing of things, it's so like it just sticks with you and it makes you enjoy it even more.
Well, there's like an innocence to how he speaks.
Yeah.
Almost like, yeah, it's very gentle. It's very, he never beats around the bush with anything. It's very just like, it's blunt, but in such a different kind of way that it kind of, every time he says something that you would normally in a movie would be the like, oh, like the throwdown or the mic drop moment. He says it and you still get that feeling, but it's a different kind of like hit where instead of just being abrupt, you're just like, oh, it's sitting with me. Oh man. Like,
yeah.
Or it makes you feel really good and you're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Or it's like a very Southern kind of phrase when he says like he and Jenny were like peas and carrots. It's like, it's just a cute thing that you get a total visual of immediately as he's telling the story. He's I guess a good storyteller, which is cool. So when the movie opens, and probably the part that I understand the least, and I've never really looked it up because I kind of like the mystery of it, but the feather that floats down from the sky during the opening scene and it kind of lands at his feet, and then of course the movie closes with the feather flying back up. I don't really know what the feather means, and it probably could mean a lot of different things. I think that it's partly related to the overall message of the movie, which is his mama says his destiny is like floating on the breeze. We're all just floating around in life. And so it's just kind of like life happens to you and that's how you respond, that kind of thing, I guess. But how you go with the flow, I guess. Because he does a good job of that.
I agree with that. I think the way the feather floats, because it's pretty jerky movements, and it doesn't just like gently. It's the whole opening credits that it like jerks around your screen. It's spinning around before it finally like comes to rest. Honestly, I've never really looked too much into it. I always thought it was just a nice, gentle way, a unique way to start the whole story. But over the years watching it, it has been one of those openings of like, I wonder if there is something to this one or to it.
Yeah.
For a little while, if you haven't seen it before, you could almost like argue that the feather is Jenny related because you don't know what's going on with Jenny. He always talks about her in the past tense. So you could almost feel like it's Jenny or Mama.
And it does kind of come into his life for a little bit and then leave again.
Yeah. So, but when you watch the movie and obviously you find out, well, it can't be Jenny because she's there.
Yeah. At the time, for most of the time, the feather is there. She's there.
But I really like the idea that the way the feather is floating, the way it's kind of like jerked around with the breeze. I like the thought that kind of helps represent what Forrest life actually is. It's something very soft. It's something very gentle, but it's being pulled in whatever direction. And it doesn't really have the choice to do anything different. He just kind of
goes with the flow.
Forced to go with it. So I really like that idea. I like that that thought. So I stick with that thought.
Yeah, I think that works totally well. And I really like kind of the overall structure of the movie. How we meet Forrest, he's sitting on a bench. One of my favorite tiny details is in that very first scene where the feather lands at his feet and you see his shoes.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking to the nurse next to him and he's talking about shoes and he's saying, Mama said you could tell a lot about people by their shoes, where they've been and who they are and all that stuff. Yeah. But I like the structure of the movie where it's mostly told in the past tense, where he's on the bench and he's just telling people about his life. And so then you see flashbacks to when he was a kid, and it kind of goes all the way through his life. And occasionally you'll come back to the bench and he'll be talking to somebody completely different.
That's one of my favorite things. Yeah. It's the different people that show up on the bench.
Yeah. And he's just waiting for that number 9 bus.
Yeah. I absolutely love that it's not like the same person or a crowd gathering. I love that. I love that it's just this. He doesn't stop telling his story. So people have obviously been coming and going, and he's just, this is what people do.
Yep. Making polite conversation.
Well, and it's fun, like, as the viewer, if I were going to a bus, like the park bench to ride the bus, maybe back then, I wouldn't do that now.
No.
No offense to the public transportation people.
Lots of offense to the public bus.
But like, how would I respond to someone just talking about their life story?
Right.
You know, it's kind of like, which one of these people would I most, relate to or resemble? I would hope I'd be more like the older lady that's there, because she seems the one that's like really into his story, even though she has to go, and or the guy that's like, oh, I remember that, like the.
I would be the nurse at the very beginning. My feet hurt.
Right.
Stop talking to me.
You brought up the. I don't know why. I'll never know why. But with the first person on the bench, the nurse.
Yeah.
You know, he's the one that he says the famous line to, and the shoes. Those are nice shoes.
First line is, my name's Forrest Gump.
Yep. When he points her shoes out, it's right after he has eaten a chunk of chocolate.
Yeah.
But he, like, finger guns at her shoe. And I don't know why, but I'm always like, I love the detail, because it's either signifying that he's still got some chocolate on his fingers and he's just like not closing the hand, or it's just like a unique way for his character. It adds a lot of like little detail to his whole character. I don't know why. Every time he points at her shoes, though, I'm like, I love that. And I can never pinpoint what it is about him pointing, going, those are nice shoes. And I'm like, it's just such a, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just love that little tiny Tom Hanks detail.
I think there are so many of those little things that Tom Hanks did as he just absorbed himself into the character.
Yeah.
That he's utterly and completely Forrest Gump in this movie. And he has so many little mannerisms and little ways he speaks and moves that is really charming, and it really draws you in.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like a fun little tidbit. The kid that plays young Forrest, Tom Hanks based his whole dialect off of that kid.
Oh, really?
Because I guess that's kind of how the kid actually talked.
That's funny.
So it's kind of like, but it just adds more layer to like the childlike innocence and just that, because he's pretty much always in that state of mind, this young kind of naive mentality, but growing up at the same. It's very, God, Tom Hanks is such.
Yeah, he's pretty darn great. I really like. Also, speaking of characters that are really good, I really like his Mama Sally Field, in the movie, and how she raises him, how she talks to him, how she explains things so that he can understand them. And one of my, like, the first flashback scene is like and another symbol of how pure and genuine he is when he describes why his mama named him Forrest. And it's
right.
about his like ancestor who was in the KKK. And the reason that I mean, they're in the South. You're all of a sudden worried. You're like, oh no, is she like a racist who's like trying to carry on the family name and stuff? And then he says that she told him the reason that she named him that was to remind him that sometimes people do things that don't make any sense. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I love you as a mom. I love you as like this person who's raising him. And she just does so many great things, and I think he represents her well as well.
Oh yeah. I love how he like describes the KKK. Mm-hmm. Just like, I don't know why they wore bed sheets and ran around. Like just like
yeah.
I love how he just shrugs them off as like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like
weird people that just do something that doesn't make any sense.
Yep. It's obnoxious and dumb, and that's all he leaves it at is that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does do one very weird and morally questionable thing, which is when he goes to school. And the I assume principal, some guy who works at the school, tells her that he like can't get into normal school. He has to go like special education classes because he doesn't meet the IQ. He doesn't meet the standard.
Just barely lower.
Yeah, it's 5 points or something lower than their standard. And so his mom, the sweet, nice Sally Field, decides to use her feminine wiles and take this guy to bed with her at her house in order to get her son into school, which is the weirdest thing to me. But
it's yeah. Yeah, she uses sex as a negotiating tactic. Mm-hmm. I love when the superintendent, principal, whatever he is, comes out of the house though, and he's like, "Boy, your mama sure does love you." Which, by the way, gross. Yeah. But I love Forrest's response to him, where he just mocks the grunts.
Yeah. It's the most like hilarious and disturbing thing that I could think of.
It's pretty gross.
As this like small child, like it was like first day of school age child. He's like, it's weird.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's always been an odd decision on her part, but I find myself never really judging it, just kind of being like, okay.
Yeah. And as a single mom, you got to do what you got to do. And
yeah,
she overall takes really good care of him. So don't judge her too harshly for it. The first like indicator that this sweet movie about this family isn't just a sweet movie about this family is, so when they start explaining that they have this house that they rent out rooms to people, and one of them is this nice young man who has a guitar, and you very quickly realize that it's Elvis Presley. Yep. And he's like singing an acoustic version of Hound Dog, and Forrest is like dancing around in his braces. Oh, by the way, Forrest has
the
braces.
Leg braces, yeah. His magic shoes.
Yeah.
They can take me anywhere.
And the way he's like moving around, you start putting together if you know Elvis, and then they actually show you Elvis dancing, and they're like on TV, and he's doing the Forrest dance like he had gotten those moves from Forrest Gump that he had met at this nice bed and breakfast.
Which is such a fun little like the influence that Forrest makes throughout his life during the course of the movie on famous people. Iconic people is very fun. I remember being a kid and being like, "Oh, that's cool!" Like, you took this very, only word coming to mind is iconic dance or whatever from Elvis, who's like, I mean, he's the king of rock and roll.
The king.
It must be hard to be the king.
Yeah.
And I just love how this little detail of like Forrest having to wear leg braces because his spine is as crooked as a politician. it's just fun. Like at first you kind of take it as, oh, it's just a silly little, maybe that'll be the one off. But then as the movie progresses, you're like, this dude is meeting everyone and being like, whatever.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite part, especially growing up. At my younger ages, my favorite part was definitely all those little moments and seeing how he fit into history and his impact on history. And then as I get older, I appreciate and understand more of the story, obviously. But I still really like those. And I also really like how he, as a character, doesn't really think about his impact on society or how he is, what his impression is that he's leaving on the people around him. Like he could very much become too proud by like, oh, I'm doing all of these great things, meeting all these great people, or oh, I did that thing for that person. Look what I did for them, that kind of thing. But he doesn't. He just kind of like living his life and kind of blissfully ignorant of the fact that he's impacting the world in this way. And I think that's, even though we may not feel like we live an extraordinary life, we interact with people every day and we leave impressions on people every day. So I think it's a great message to be like, remember that you are meaningfully impressing the world and leaving an impact and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And maybe not, I like the whole approach of Forrest of he doesn't like really put any thought to it. He's not seeking any validation for, you know, what he does for Lieutenant Dan. He doesn't look for any validation for the family home or even really from Jenny. He has a couple moments with her, but he always just like, no, Jenny is forever a part of my life. So he loves her no matter what. And it's but he's never really actively seeking validation. I mean, when he meets the presidents to get his medals, I mean, he has no thought to it. He's more concerned about peeing or just kind of being there. It would be great to moon a president. Though.
Yeah, showing his ass. Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite parts is when he goes to see Reagan. He goes the third time. He's like, so I went to the White House again. And I met the president again.
Like
it's kind of like inconvenient to him. He's like,
yeah,
you know, I'm just trying to live my life, and every these people are making me go to the White House all the time.
Not Reagan, by the way.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
whatever. Reagan gets shot later.
Yeah,
it's not a spoiler. It happened in history.
Yeah, it's a real piece of history. Yeah, his character is like all those little interactions with Mama. You brought her up earlier. I love Mama. You know, Sally Field does such a great job of just encompassing all of our moms. I really felt like I always felt like when I watched Forrest's mom, I could always see my mom kind of talking to me in that way, you know, not like dumbing things down or whatnot, but just the genuine care, the genuine love.
Right.
And the only thing Mama and my mom and moms all over, the sole like mission from them is to make sure their children are growing up strong or independent, you know, being able to like face something that'll come their way, go with the flow almost.
And learn to do the right thing and be polite to people and be kind to people and that kind of thing.
So Sally Field's portrayal as Forrest's mom is just, I always felt like it was genuine, and that it's pretty awesome when like you get a performance like that where it just feels so good, so natural. You're like, yep, I could see her being all of our moms. You know,
yeah, absolutely. So, on the first day of school, Forrest meets the villain of the movie. I'm joking. I love Jenny. I feel like Forrest does, even when it's unrequited, that there's a genuine love there. And I really do love Jenny. I think that she's very sweet. And over time, I've learned to understand her more. And
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
have
her life is not her fault.
I have a pretty deep appreciation for the character because she's so flawed,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes so much sense,
Mm-hmm.
especially as you get older and you really learn what her childhood actually was, and even adulthood actually was. Um, yeah, it. Jenny's introduction to me is a moment of the movie where you're like, "Oh, it's not a completely happy story." Like, oh, the movie's going to have some pretty dark elements in it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. You know,
Yeah.
I remember being being a kid and watching it, and when she runs with Forrest into the field to get away from Dad.
Yeah.
As a kid, you know, I was pretty naive to a lot of things still, but just the way they set it up, you're like, oh, something's really
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Right.
Like, this is not good. And then Forrest's narration over it, you're like, yeah, this is horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he explains it in a very innocent way that you can tell he doesn't understand, but as adults you can start putting the pieces together. When he kind of teases it early on when he says for some reason Jenny never wanted to go home, and then that scene where she drags him into the field, and then there's like the way the camera is set up is kind of like at a child's vision level, kind of like a Peanuts level, where you don't see the top of the parent's body. It's just like waist level, and her dad's like carrying like a bottle. He's obviously like kind of a drunk guy, and and Forrest's narration saying that he was a very loving man. He was always kissing and touching his sisters, her and her sisters, and you're like, oh, this is gross and very very shitty. And as when they get in the field, it's like the most heartbreaking thing when Jenny pulls him to the ground and tells him to pray with her so she can fly far, far away and be a bird. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is it's tragic.
It is. And that's what like Forrest Gump ends up doing as a movie is it gives you a whole lot of very sweet moments or very just like fun. You're enjoying, you're like, hey.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just like roundhouse kicks you and it's like, and real dark subject matter. And you're like, oh, yeah, real life still sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And I think it's really good, I think, to set it up early like that. And then as she kind of grows up, she's making these decisions and being in these bad relationships and doing drugs and going all over the country. And you kind of start to not like her, and you kind of start to be like, you're on Forrest's side, obviously. You're like, he just wants to love you. He's a nice guy. Why won't you let him love you? But then when that comes full circle at the end, and Jenny and Forrest go back to that house and she's throwing rocks at it. And I think it's a really good reminder of how, even in real life, not just in the movie, but in general in life, people's lives are formed by their childhood so much. And especially kids like Jenny, who have been abused and have an absent father figure or worse, a sexually abusive father figure. Your life is now forever changed. And it's a direct repercussion. The choices she makes is a direct repercussion of the abuse that she had as a child. And that's why all of her relationships she's in are abusive relationships. And she kind of can't let Forrest love her because she doesn't know what that should be.
His love is genuine. It's, it's loving. It's actual love.
Yeah.
Whereas all she's ever known love to actually mean is the abuse and the violence of it. So her whole life, she's kind of accepted this persona of like, or not persona, but this mentality of I'm only worth this. I'm only as good as this. Which is, that shouldn't be anyone's mentality. And Jenny's character is one of the most tragic in Forrest Gump. I mean, she's got a pretty good, well, even the conclusion of her story is like,
yeah,
God, she just can't never caught a break.
Yeah,
like,
it gets better, but it's still not great.
It gets better, but it's such a bittersweet better.
Yeah.
Because it's still ultimately very tragic. But yeah, Jenny, even I remember just being a kid and turn me into a bird so I can fly far, far away. And she just like repeats it almost like it's a mantra. So it's not so much a prayer for her, but you're like, you get the sense this is a daily, nightly, constant kind of mantra that she is repeating over and over and over and over again out of desperation.
Right.
And poor Forrest has no clue what any of that means because his life is so opposite that.
Right. Yeah. He lives he has a very loving parent and it's hard for him to understand it for sure. So on the lighter side, I like the Run Forrest Run scene that happens that everybody knows and sees, even if you haven't seen the movie. It's a miracle. Miracles happen every day. They say it right in the movie, and it's kind of just a fun, beautiful way for him to break out of his braces, and he is a running fool. He just loves to run, and everywhere he goes, he's running.
Yeah, running becomes like not just something he does, but running becomes such an essential part of his character. And it's never running out of fear. He's simply just running.
Running because he's good at it.
And at one point he uses running almost as like catharsis, as a healing tool. Which I'm like, God damn. I can't even run for 10 minutes without feeling like I'm going to fucking die.
Right. Even if I had to do it to save my life.
Right. I'd probably just be like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
The Run Forrest Run scene. I've actually never taken it as like kind of a cheesy. I know the line has been memed, abused. It's been abused, mocked all over the place, which whatever. But I love that first run scene because to me it shows such a great like here's the next step into Forrest's evolution or into his like he's moving past this point and now we're going into the next phase. It's a nice kind of growing tool that they give him.
Yeah, that's a
I've
good
always
point.
Really liked.
It is kind of like a snake shedding its skin or something where he's just grown up too big for that and he's grown up past it and he's growing beyond it. That's a good way to look at it, I think.
Yeah. And then I love how excited as Forrest is narrating his story of like, and I was running. Like, I love how excited he is that he was running because I mean he's no longer awkwardly walking everywhere and he's on his feet for 99% of that movie. It's crazy. Yeah, you almost can't help but feel like it's very purposeful because of all the time that he had to spend in those braces and being told like your spine's all jacked up, so you're probably going to be screwed your whole life. But he's like, no, full advantage. It's almost like the one thing that he's very aware of. So I don't know. I might be looking too deep, but
that's actually a really interesting point because I don't remember him ever getting into a car in the movie. He rides a helicopter with Bubba, but I think everywhere he goes, he's walking or running or swimming or on the boat. But every time he comes home, he's like running home or walking home.
Yeah, he does drive the lawnmower.
True. But
which might be the and that I think that's the only scene where he's like sitting down to move.
Yeah.
And at that point in the story he's like, I've experienced I don't know
he's
what
basically
else
retired.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I just like, and it was one that I've noticed periodically, but rewatching it this week, I know we try to really like try and find the details or see, could there be something behind this? I don't know if there is, but that was one thing that kind of stood out to me this week was once those braces bust off of his legs, the dude is never like just relax, like sitting down, or he's never, I mean, he sits on his porch a couple times, but
yeah,
the whole movie, he is on his feet moving, whether it's walking or running. It's very, I thought it was interesting. It was something I've never noticed before, or like paid too much attention before. You kind of notice it a few times, but yeah, I wonder if there is something there. I'd be curious to find out for sure.
Yeah, he definitely lives a very active life where he does a lot of things and goes a lot of places and meets a lot of people. And meanwhile, I'm watching the movie about 150 times laying in the bed. So I probably should get some sort of message from that. But well, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But the second running scene with Jenny, now they're all grown up. They're about to go to college. And Forrest gets to go to college because he just runs, and he runs down the football field, and they recruit him for no reason other than he's a very fast runner.
Yeah. Not just a fast runner.
Maybe the fastest of all time.
He outruns everyone on the field.
Yeah. Granted, okay, maybe this is a bad thing to say, but I'm going to say granted it's before they integrated the schools, so he's running against white people, so they're very slow. Speaking of which, they integrate the schools. So,
the way they spliced Forrest into like the actual news footage of the school, the first black students being allowed into the school.
Yeah, historical black and white footage.
Yeah. I love how they did this because it's like true, perfect Forrest Gump fashion. She drops her book and he picks it up, hands it to her, and then looks at everyone else like, what's wrong with all of you? And then just goes into school.
Just waves and he's like, okay, I'm going into school now.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're all standing around.
Yeah, he has no, I guess, no awareness of what is actually going on. One of the white students tells him they're going to let all the black kids into the school now. They want to go to school. And he's like, oh, they want to go to school.
They want to go to school. That's cool. That's weird. That's cool. Yeah, I love Forrest's mentality and how he just, no matter who you are, no matter your race, no matter your station in life, no matter if you're a famous rock star or the president or some guy on the street, he treats everybody the exact same. Everybody has the exact same amount of dignity, the exact same amount of kindness. He's just a very genuine and even-keeled, fair person, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone starts off with a very clean slate for him. And
yeah. And the people that are bad to him, he's still pretty nice to. He just kind of keeps them a little bit of a distance. He's like, I don't really like you, but I'm not going to be mean, too mean to you.
Until he sees someone.
Unless you smack a lady.
Unless you smack a lady and then Forrest
fuck you up
down.
Yeah. That's the most fun when Forrest actually and that's another thing I really appreciate about Forrest Gump's character is that he has, partly I'm sure imparted by his mama, he has a set of principles or ethics that he will do the right thing, and he's not afraid to act. He's not slow to act in any sense. If if he sees something he should do, whether it's picking up a book that a lady dropped or someone being hit or some girl in a car he doesn't really know, felt up or whatever, he will jump into action and do what he thinks is right. And I think noble. I think it's awesome and beautiful. And so yeah, when he sees that like slow motion that Jenny gets slapped, and he just like eyes roll back in his head and just starts beating the shit out of that guy, I'm like, that's amazing. I love him.
I've always been curious, and maybe this gets talked about more in depth in the book. I don't know. I've never read the book. I actually didn't even know it was originally a book until like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it was it's adapted from a book. And then I found out they made a sequel where he like goes to space or something like that. And immediately I was like, no sequel. And I'm not sure I even want to read the book.
Yeah.
Because if that's the direction you're going to take his character, I feel like it would ruin what's so beloved to me.
Yeah.
But I've always been curious, and he never mentions it in the movie, but how he processes going to war and like taking life. Because he's trekking through the wilderness. He's in firefights. You see him in gunfights.
Yeah, but they don't really. I mean, maybe it does happen. Maybe he I don't know how long he's there, but almost the entire time that we see him, we're following him. They're just walking. They're walking through jungle. They're walking through forest. They're walking through rain mostly. And there is one big fight where it stops raining and they all get shot up, and he shoots back because he was trained to. And he does. I think he does such a good job in the army because he does a good job of doing what he's supposed to and processing. He's like excels at everything he does because he just puts his 100% into it. But so he shoots back, not really aiming. He's just kind of returning fire. And so I don't know if he even did take life or even had to process it. He just kind of was there.
Always kind of been curious about that. I mean, he's in war.
He saw shit. He saw people die at in his arms for sure. But
and I've always been curious, like, how would Forrest process this? And I actually think the way he would be fairly simple. I don't think it would really like hit real deep for him. I kind of view he would be like, and then that was that. You know, just kind of like, we were told they were doing bad things and this is what we had to do, so we did that. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, that tends to be how he kind of will end a topic that is getting too heavy or something. He will kind of compartmentalize maybe in a way.
Yeah.
The way it just is that I don't have to talk about that much. I'd like to talk about the better things.
But bringing up the whole Vietnam sequence, which we're skipping a whole bunch, and we can jump back into it. But you brought it up, so I have to.
Yeah.
The drill sergeant is one of my favorite parts of the movie because he's screaming at Forrest, but he's so excited that Forrest is good at following orders. I just, Jesus H. Christ, Gump!
Why did you put that rifle together so fast? Because you told me to. God damn it, Gump. That's the best answer I've ever heard in my life.
He's just so happy and so excited. And he sounds so angry.
Yeah. It's the only volume he has is angry 11 volume. Whether he's happy or sad or whatever.
It's every time the drill sergeant shows up. And then the following scene, after being so excited about how awesome Forrest is, he's like scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush. And you're like, this is great. Listening to Bubba talk about shrimp.
Yeah. Oh, I love Bubba especially when he kind of meets Bubba. It very much calls back to his first day on the bus at school. It's right after he left college. I don't think we skipped that much, other than Jenny kind of making him ruin her roommate's towel or a bathrobe. But that happened.
Which was a scene I never got until like high school age. And then watching that movie again and you see it, you're like,
did he just...
Man.
Yeah.
He did. He really did.
Yeah. Good for you, bud. But as he graduates, he just plays football in college. That's really all that happens. And then he graduates college, gets recruited in the army immediately, and kind of like a lot of things in his life, he just kind of moves on to what life gives him next. And so it's like, okay, I'll do this. And so he goes and does this, and he's great at it. But he meets Bubba on the bus, and it's very much like his first day of school, where people don't want to sit with him. And it's like, they're just kind of mean. Bubba, like Jenny, his other best friend, has like an open seat and invites him in, and they just start chit-chatting, and he tells him all about shrimp, and his whole family knows about shrimp, and he just loves shrimp, and he's just so kind of like Forrest, where he's just kind and gentle and a sweet guy.
Yeah, I've always felt Bubba is like the brother from another mother for Forrest, very much. And I love that it's like immediate. It happens with Jenny and it happens with Bubba, where they sit down together on the bus, and it's like just this agreement, unspoken agreement. Well, we're best friends now.
Yeah.
That's just
yeah, absolutely.
Like, I've always loved that, and I love their friendship is so funny because Forrest doesn't say a lot to Bubba. He just kind of soaks in all of Bubba's shrimp talk.
Yeah.
And then, after Bubba passes away, Forrest, you realize, like, was actually listening, actually paying attention, and was invested.
Yeah.
He was soaking it all in, because then he decides, like, okay, well, Bubba was a friend, so I have to do the right thing by him, and I'm going to go and do this because that's what he wanted to do. Right. So
yeah, I
love that
he made a promise to his friend that he would be a shrimping captain with him. And even though his friend's gone, he's still going to keep his promise.
Because it's like the right thing to do. Their friendship is such a unique cinematic friendship because they don't share a whole lot of like real kind of deep, intimate moments together. It's very just Bubba always talks, and Forrest is kind of like,
yeah. Yeah, it's not like they share too much about their lives or their childhoods, or it's just kind of like, we're in this place doing this thing together, and we enjoy being together, and it's comfortable, I guess.
And Bubba gets told to it's such a great when Lieutenant Dan meets Bubba for the first time, he tells him, tuck that lip in before you get shot off.
I was born with big gums, sir. And when he does, it looks so funny.
Yeah, and he actually does tuck it in, which is such a great little, like...
You're going to catch that on a tripwire.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Yeah, Lieutenant Dan, when they go meet Lieutenant Dan Taylor, he is also... There's not that many characters in this movie. There's like 4, maybe 5 characters, but they're all such big characters, and I think because they're big impacts on Forrest's life, that he especially later in life, as he's kind of reflecting, he's like, I was thinking about Mama, I was thinking about Jenny, I was thinking about Bubba, I was thinking about Lieutenant Dan. Those are the only people that he's like really connected with in his life, and you can kind of tell when he meets Gary Sinise's character, Lieutenant Dan, has a big impact. He's going to have a big impact on his life.
Yeah, immediately when Gary Sinise shows up, like, you're not just this sequence of the story. Like, you really understand, no, this guy's going to be... I mean, it's Gary Sinise, so automatically... Like, they didn't do that in the 90s where big names would only show up for one scene or two. You knew he was like, no, his name's higher on the bill. He's going to be in the movie for a while. The relationship between Forrest and Lieutenant Dan is so good, and it's so fleshed out. Like, I love their relationship throughout the whole film.
It's deep. It's like, at first, it doesn't seem like it's going to be deep, and then it kind of in the middle, it seems very uncomfortable because he's so mad at Forrest. But
Yeah.
they end up forming this bond around kind of more deep things than kind of, like you said, Bubba and Forrest don't talk about that much of deep stuff. But Forrest and Lieutenant Dan talk about some of the biggest questions in life and kind of come to believing in certain things because of those conversations.
Yeah, they experience pretty profound moments together. Not just like spiritually, I guess, but just as humans. They kind of together have to, the big storm sequence happens, and I love how Forrest just like, and it was right after that. This is just how things were, you know. It's like I like that they use that big storm that culminates. Really, I mean, that's their like crescendo moment
Climax
together.
Yeah.
And I love how there's just like the peace afterwards, and the Forrest just being like, and then everything changed after that. Everything was like Lieutenant Dan was calm all of a sudden. But their relationship has always it means so much, especially after Forrest gets to see Lieutenant Dan again after you don't know how long, really. You figure they stay in contact because Dan is running the captain duties while Forrest gets to collect royalty checks.
Yeah. That's some of that sweet Apple money.
Yeah. Which that ends up being one of my favorite quick moments is Forrest seeing Lieutenant Dan walk.
Yeah.
For the first time since Vietnam.
Magic
It
legs.
goes back to Tom Hanks just being a master at his craft. The little facial tics of him trying to hold back like tears and stuff of seeing Lieutenant Dan walking. You're just like, oh, fuck you, Tom. But their relation, I mean, when Lieutenant Dan shows up like that, that's really the like confirmation or just the little cherry on top of their relationship of like it's so much deeper even than what we got to watch them go through, because Lieutenant Dan, when you first meet him, you don't get the impression that he's going to like he would ever attend Forrest's wedding, let alone work for Forrest.
Right. Yeah, he starts out not caring about Forrest at all. He's just kind of an expendable grunt.
Yeah.
And then he ends up really loathing and hating Forrest because he kind of robbed him of his destiny. That's kind of the most interesting part of Lieutenant Dan's story, I think, is he feels he has this lineage of every person. He has a person in his family, every generation of his family, who has fought and died in every American war. And so he feels a very strong destiny or responsibility to carry on that lineage in like a weird, dark way. And then when he doesn't get that, when he is in this big fight and his whole platoon is wiped out and Forrest saves him, and now he's not only robbed of his destiny, he's still alive, but he also is now crippled. He has no legs below the knees, and he has to be reclined to a wheelchair the rest of his life, or so you think. He falls into an incredible depression because he doesn't even know what to do anymore because his whole destiny is robbed.
It's an interesting thing of like, I don't even understand how someone would make that almost their duty to follow that kind of legacy of, okay, I'm going to enlist. I'm going to die in a war. Like that's you want that to be your destiny. You almost view it as a responsibility, like you said. And yeah, for that to like, your destiny is completely changed. How do you cope with that? And I think Gary Sinise does such a great job showing the lack of coping with that and just being like, I shouldn't be here at all after this. Everything sucks. Which again goes to the big storm where Dan he has this giant verbal attack on God or whoever. And and then it's just, okay, there's peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, I love Lieutenant Dan. He's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, not just character, but I think just overall, he's one of the best decisions made by the writers.
Yeah, I think you see the first glimpse of like redeemableness, like because he's mean to Forrest for a while. He's obviously mad at him, but he when I first saw him, like they have that New Year's party and he throws the like girl off when she calls Forrest stupid. He like defends Forrest, and when I saw him defend Forrest, I was like, you kind of understand. Okay, he does care about Forrest. He's not just some guy that he knew from the war. He doesn't have anything better to do. They are forming a friendship, like a real friendship at this point.
Yeah. Seeing Lieutenant Dan get very defensive for Forrest is it's telling of that character. Of as much as he hates Forrest or is so mad at him, there's still like this ultimately a respect or friendship, kinship, whatever. No one else gets to be that kind of way to him. No one gets to be mean to him. Almost like the big brother kind of mentality.
Yeah.
You know? Only I get to say that kind of shit to him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. And I think he embodies the especially Vietnam era wounded veteran as well, where when he comes back, he's got the long hair and the beard and he's so beaten down and he's in a wheelchair going through ridiculously like terrible VA benefits and that stuff. So even though he is depressed for a reason that maybe not everybody feels this duty to die for a generational responsibility or whatever. But certainly many people who came back and saw those kind of, had that trauma happen to them and had to come back and integrate into normal life, felt a disconnect, or felt that they couldn't fit in or feel as comfortable at parties. Or I think he does a good job of embodying that in a more general sense than just his specific character as well.
Yeah. Well, it's the movie, especially with like the Vietnam sequence, is very interesting to watch as someone from the outside, like our generation, almost having learned about what Vietnam vets kind of went through when they came home. It wasn't like a grand welcoming.
Oh yeah.
You know, so watching the movie with that kind of historical knowledge of like what vets have been going through, it's kind of, you never see him really get any verbal abuse or anything like that in the movie, but just seeing what his lifestyle is now like, you get that sense, knowing kind of a bigger picture of like, man, things are just so bad because not only is his destiny gone from him, he has no coping mechanisms. He's got no one to talk to. He's got no one because he's probably, since he viewed his destiny to die, he probably never formed any relationships.
Yeah.
Because why would you?
Yeah. He's lived past his expiration date, and he feels he shouldn't be here, feels like he didn't prepare for any of this long-term stuff.
Yeah, so that's always been kind of an interesting added layer to me, was just like all the history post Vietnam, like right after troops were coming home, and then seeing how Forrest is like talked to compared to how Lieutenant Dan's life actually is. And you're like, ooh, this is like, none of it's really great. I mean, when Forrest comes home and that Jenny's douchebag, whatever he wants to be, activist boyfriend.
Yeah.
First thing he says to Jenny, because he's not even talking to Forrest, just, who's the baby killer. And you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Forrest would actually do that. In fact, I don't buy his character would ever be a part of
Mm-hmm.
that aspect of
Yeah.
the Vietnam War. But
yeah, it's an interesting contrast because Forrest does seem to kind of accidentally live a more comfortable life where he gets the Medal of Honor. He comes home, meets the president, and he's all clean cut and dressed up and dressed nice. And then contrasted with Lieutenant Dan, who's dirty and grungy, living in a wheelchair, like just very depressed, and kind of the opposite, where they both were in the exact same situation, back exact same circumstances, mostly. And so, yeah, you do, I guess, feel for Lieutenant Dan more because part of it's mentality. I mean, part of it is Forrest is successful a lot of the time because he has a good attitude about it. And if you have an extremely negative attitude about it, you can certainly beat yourself down. That can contribute. That's probably not all of. I'm not saying that's everything that happened to Lieutenant Dan, but that's can contribute a significant amount for sure.
Yeah, his character is just. I think they wrote him so well, and the costuming for him, all the setup for Lieutenant Dan was done so well because we just went on for a little while of unspoken things about Lieutenant Dan, but you get this extreme sense of like, oh, he's been completely discarded by society or by our country. Whereas, like you said, Forrest was in the exact same. I mean, Forrest literally dragged him out of the forest that was being blown up.
Right.
And Forrest is clean cut and he's being accepted back into society. He has a very 180 from what Lieutenant Dan's experienced. Yeah, God, Forrest Gump's so good.
Yeah. He gets to go meet the president. He gets the Medal of Honor. He gets to speak. And then you, like you said, there is an interesting part of, especially the Vietnam era, where these troops are coming home and they're not accepted home, and they do show a little bit of that with he shows up and he's just touring DC and kind of accidentally gets put in this protest because he's just among these other vets who are actually protesting. He's just there taking pictures and stuff, and but then he gets up on stage and stuff, and just the way that all happens, and you kind of see people protesting this war that he was involved in, and there's a lot of rabble rousing. There's a lot of like people are very passionate, obviously, about it, and he's kind of isolated in himself. He's just like a guy living his life, doing his thing, and not getting too wound up or too crazy about anything like big picture stuff that he can't really control. A lot of people, I think these people are bringing a lot of negativity into their life in a weird way by worrying too much about a lot of things. Not to say that you shouldn't protest, obviously, but there's a kind of a beauty or a simpleness to worrying about what you can worry about and taking ownership of your own life and just going with the flow in a way.
Yeah. Well, and that scene is so interesting to me because Forrest gets asked to tell this gigantic multitude of people what it was like in Vietnam. And as he starts to talk, the audio feed gets unplugged, but he continues to talk. Have you ever seen what his lines are?
No, I didn't know he had lines.
So he does actually have lines. The lines are, oh crap, it's on IMDb actually.
Okay.
Of course, I hit the home button because I'm an idiot. It's in the trivia. Anyways, it's about like we fought over there and I saw people going home back to their mamas with no legs. And that's not something that should happen. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Wow, it's the first piece of trivia, actually. So sometimes when people go to Vietnam, they go home to their mamas without any legs. Sometimes they don't go home at all, and that's a bad thing. And that's all I have to say about that.
Oh.
I actually really like that because it just, like, they wanted him to go and, because they're... Okay. when it comes to the protesters, yes, protest. Wave that middle finger in the sky, you know. We're all for it.
Right.
But I always feel like there's always a sense of people are only looking at like the surface of something, or it's done more for like trending, look at me kind of stuff.
Not always directed at the actual thing.
Yeah. And, you know, they want Forrest to have this huge, they expect him to have this huge, passionate, you know, fuck you to the government, to the war, to all that. And he just sums it straight down to like, yeah, bad things happen. It shouldn't happen. You know, he's unapologetic. He's very just, this is something that happens, guys.
Yeah.
But it's in a Forrest Gump manner. So it's got just that's one of the scenes that I was kind of like exampling in my head earlier when I said Forrest has certain lines or moments where it's not so much like a mic drop moment. It's just he'll say something and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
He doesn't even, you don't hear him say any of that. But when he finishes it with, and that's all I have to say about that, you have an instant understanding that it was like very prominent. It was very
profound,
important and profound. And you just, he probably said something. And like, I feel like I just learned a lesson and I have no clue what it was quite yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
But yeah, I think having an understanding of what is going on, you know, looking at a broader, bigger picture is always more important, especially when you're trying to rouse the masses.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's a very powerful.
Say about that.
That's a very powerful thing, and you should be intentional with the goal.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. The other thing that you mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was how Forrest Lieutenant Dan comes back and he doesn't really have anything to live for. Forrest kind of gets handed again on the next step where it's like you can come and work for the army by putting on shows and playing ping pong.
Yeah.
And he's like, I like playing ping pong. That sounds good to me. And so he does, and ends up becoming very famous for playing ping pong, and goes to China and is like the first American there in a long time, and comes home, is on TV with John Lennon. And I didn't really mention this, but it's kind of an interesting thing as well, that a lot of the people that he talks about meeting, he then immediately talks about, and then they went on to be killed in this way or die in this way. And you are just remembered, going back to my beard, Death Wobble, he is acutely aware of the finiteness of existence in like a weird way for somebody that's like him, that he's aware that everybody dies in time, nobody stays around forever, and it doesn't matter if you're the king of rock and roll or the president of the United States or my mom, everybody ends up dying. And so you kind of need to just enjoy the moment in a weird way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's nice, is all I'm saying about that.
How many times are we going to repeat his line?
Probably a lot.
A lot.
I'll say a lot of his lines a lot.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like his acceptance of like, these people show up in my life, whether it's for a long period of time or a deep period of time or just in passing. Either way, eventually everyone has to die. Just how you go, whatever. It's kind of interesting that he's able to accept death pretty well. But he's deeply affected by a couple of them. We'll get to, but it's nice to see, even though he has an understanding and acceptance of like when Mama passes away. Yeah, he's very sad. But as he tells the story of like, and then she passed away, he's not like it's not holding him back anymore. He's very just like, she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously he had to have grieved, but his character's grieving process is still very much like, but I have to go. I have to keep moving. We have to keep doing something.
Yeah.
But then it becomes more of just out of respect for that person. That way, that's how he grieves. It's just like, well, I'm just going to honor them in life then, which is so cool.
It is really cool. I really like that about him. And he does a similar thing when he's talking to Jenny later on, when she's like, well, I wish I could have been there when you saw this thing or saw this thing. And he says, you were. And I think that's really beautiful, that even for like the people that he's lost, for Bubba and for his mama, as long as he keeps their memory alive, they're with him all the time. And so that, I think, makes it easier for him to just move on.
Yeah, it's such a cool way to show kind of like a grieving process or handling of characters' deaths in a movie is the survivors don't just focus on, oh, you died. It's very much just like, well, no, I'm just going to keep you with me. But now it's a little bit different than before.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not ever going to see you again, but
Forrest wears a Bubba Gump hat for like the last half of the movie. So, you know, as soon as he gets the shrimp boat and starts the company, he wears that hat the rest of the film.
Yeah. He's very proud of his company that he and Bubba came up with.
Yeah. And it's, well, and I take it as he's proud of it, but he's also like, he's got that hat on almost as a, like, it's literally got Bubba's name on it. So he
also put him first. It's Bubba Gump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many little details. Making sure that Bubba's family gets Bubba's share of the money is so cool.
It's so cool. It's like a very big sect, like moral thing to do. Like his ethics are unfaulted in that sense that he will just give them 50% of this massive company that now he has.
Which is great how he said Lieutenant Dan thought I was insane or crazy for doing it, but and I love like Bubba's family. I'm pretty positive that's Bubba's mom.
Yeah.
How she does that, like, oh my God.
She passes
falls
out.
Backward. Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be a massive check that she just got. And they're living in like a shack in the bayou. It's like a huge sudden upgrade, which is cool.
And suddenly she wasn't having to cook for people anymore. I love the flip of it.
Yeah. It's really fun. The other crazy thing about all these people dying like presidents and things, and the news is an interesting thing, not just because Forrest shows up in it several times, but it grounds the movie in reality. Like a lot of us, even though we weren't alive as our parents' generation, it was a really wild generation, or a really wild period of time that was very tumultuous in a way. So many things changed from the 50s to the 90s that you went through segregation, you went through Vietnam, you went through all of these things to all of a sudden computers. And it's such an insane, maybe the most insane period of 30, 40, 50 years that we've ever had. And all of these, like, we have ever experienced, I don't remember Reagan getting shot, and we haven't had a president getting shot in our lifetime that we like are aware of. But you look at this time, it's like, oh, well, this president got shot, this president died, this president died, this president's brother died, this president like candidate died. Like all of these people are like, Lenin died. Like all these people are getting killed, and it's just a very kind of scary time, I think.
Yeah. Change.
It was a very strong push for change in a lot of ways, and to set Forrest Gump as the most innocent and steady thing ever in that time is very interesting.
Yeah, in terms of character growth, it's so crazy watching Forrest grow, because he really does mature a lot through the course of the film, but he maintains that like baseline foundation of being grounded, of being kind of innocent and somewhat naive to some things, or the large impact of certain things. But it's really interesting to have him as a centerpiece, as, oh God, as the country was like not gradually going through changes, but just like speed racing to change, you know, which change is good. Yeah. Change is scary, but I think we've all kind of learned like, maybe trying to change things too fast or too abruptly can maybe have not exactly the outcome you're looking for. But it's interesting that Forrest is set in that period of time, like you said, where how insane was that from the 50s to the 90s? I mean, good Lord. You know?
Yeah, it's really insane. And I've said it was Reagan before, but it was Nixon who was president when he went to the White House for the third time for the ping pong tournament. And it's funny because he directly contributes to him being impeached.
Yeah. He gets upgraded to stay at the Watergate Hotel. Nixon puts him in the room. And Forrest does the right thing by being like, "Oh, you got some people wandering around in this room."
Yeah, he's like, "I think they have the power out. You should check on them. I hope they're okay." And you're like, "Oh." And then it's cut to Nixon. "Oh, I'm resigning as the president of the United States."
Good job, Forrest. Good job.
It's pretty hilarious. But it was after that he got discharged from the army, and he took all of his money for his ping pong money from his sponsorships and telling his little white lie that he used this Flexo Light ping pong paddle to go and start the Bubba Gump Ship Company. And I always enjoy so obviously Forrest has a shitty time getting started. Being a shrimp boat captain is pretty hard. He doesn't do a good job. But when Lieutenant Dan shows up on the dock and Forrest sees him, and he just jumps off the boat and swims towards him, and he's so excited to see him, and he's like, "Why are you here?" And he's like, "I came to test out my sea legs." But Lieutenant Dan, you ain't got no legs. It's the best. It's like, I know that, Forrest.
That scene is one of those scenes where you're like, because I think the movie was listed as an actual comedy. I think it's like first genre.
Could be.
I think. And that sequence is one of the most like genuine comedic, like purposeful comedic scenes in the movie. Oh no, it's drama. Okay, well,
drama romance.
You can tell that scene is very like, oh no, this will be really funny. We have Forrest seeing Lieutenant Dan, and instead of just docking the ship, just jumps off of it. But not, he like Wile E. Coyote runs off of it. He's
just
still
running,
waving as he falls in the water.
Legs moving while he's falling through the sky,
And then, but Lieutenant Dan, you ain't got no legs. I know that, dummy. But then you see the ship behind them crash into the dock, and Forrest has that first reaction, "Oh God, what did I do?"
That's my boat. It's really great and wholesome, and I like it a lot. And it's sad to me seeing the kind of, I guess, juxtaposition between their adventures now on the shrimp boat, and then Forrest talking about thinking about Jenny, and he names his boat after Jenny, and then he's like wondering what she's doing, and then it like cuts her and she's like being abused by another boyfriend, or doing drugs and is suicidal on a ledge, about to be the girl at the beginning of Lethal Weapon,
right?
And and it's like it's just sad, and I'm always very sad for Jenny.
Yeah,
she just needs love. She needs love, and she needs Forrest to love her, like accept Forrest's love.
Yeah, acceptance of actual love. That's the big key. And you and I already brought that up of like her character is very well defined of here's the consequences of that kind of upbringing. Mm-hmm. You know, she automatically expects abuse and to be taken advantage of, and that's all she's good for. So she rejects genuine love and just accepts just a hellish life. And yeah, her story's so sad to me every time I watch it. Watching it this week, I was like, God, you need a break.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't get it. I mean, ultimately, we can dive into Jenny. We should dive into Jenny.
Yeah, she, not long after that, she comes to stay with him, and it seems like she's kind of grown up. She's, you know, dressing more
not
maternal in a way. Yeah. She's dressing like a normal lady for her age, and seems to be clean, I guess, is the main aspect. Yeah. She seems to have cleaned up her life, not on drugs anymore. And they have good talks. And
she plays house with him.
Yeah.
And things seem to be going pretty well until he confronts her, which is one of the best parts in the movie for me, because Forrest completely drops the going with the flow of things. He finally just like, I gotta know. I like
it may be the first like active decision he made that wasn't like just accepting something coming to him. He actively said, will you marry me? I'm going to go out on a limb and ask you to marry me.
Yeah. And when she like rejects that, he confronts her with the why won't you love me, or why don't you love me? And I love the way he says, like, I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. It's such a like, ooh, that's a gut punch right there. It's like, of all characters or people that would make you just feel so bad,
right,
to have that kind of character confront you in that way would be like, I don't know if I would be able to handle that.
Yeah, that he's self-aware, I guess, is one part of it. It's also a reference or a callback to him remembering that first time that he said he loved her and she said, you don't know what love is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's obviously probably bothered him, that he's always been like, yes, I do, obviously, and I always have, and I always will.
But it's right after he confronts Jenny about it that she bails out again.
Yeah. Well, right before he confronts her is probably my favorite part, where they're going on walks and talking, and they end up at her old house. Yeah. And she kind of has her, I guess, full circle moment where she kind of realizes that this house and her upbringing and just the beginning of her life is kind of really the reason that she has had such a shitty existence and terrible relationships. It's ruined her life. Like this one place and what happened here ruined her whole life. And so she gets very understandably upset and is throwing rocks. And probably my favorite line in the whole movie is when Forrest comes, she's upset, she's on the ground, and Forrest comes up and says, sometimes I guess there just aren't enough rocks. And I love that line so much. And then, right after that is when the second favorite line is that I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
Yeah. It's such a, I love the whole sequence with Jenny during that time, because you can tell that she's very much like actively putting her life behind her. She's trying to put, that brave foot forward, trying to go for the change. She knows Forrest is that kind of catalyst to help her make it. But then she's confronted with, you still have to grow up. So you still have to and it's almost like it gets too real for her all of a sudden.
Right.
And so and this is a very common thing for people to do, where we resort to the old ways because there's like a comfort in it, not a good comfort, but a comfort nonetheless of like, well, I was able to get through it if I did that. So I guess I'm just going to, and then Jenny vanishes again.
After she bones him.
Right. Which is key.
She does sneak into his room. They have a nice little conversation and she lets him make a home run there. Yep. My question to you though. Do you think that she gave Forrest Gump AIDS at that moment? Or did she get AIDS after? Because I feel like she was clean, unless she was like reverted in her ways and got AIDS after. That's possible. But it's also possible that she gave Forrest Gump AIDS.
Maybe. I thought that for a long time. And then when I was reading all the trivia stuff and production notes about it, it turns out she does not have AIDS in the movie.
What does she have?
It's hepatitis. It's one of the hepatitis ones.
One of those letters.
Yeah.
I've always seen online that she had AIDS.
Everyone assumed that.
I always thought it was weird that everybody assumed that because I never got that until I started reading it everywhere. And then I was like, oh, everybody else must be right. I must be dumb.
And it turns out everyone's been wrong since the movie came out. Yeah, it's one of the hepatitis viruses that she has. I think she was clean. Well, I think she was disease free.
Okay.
When she was with Forrest. Or she had the disease and Forrest got lucky and it did not transfer to either of them.
I would hope not. Yeah.
Yeah. Here it is. Hepatitis C. Yeah.
Okay.
So at the time that her story comes to a close, was in the 80s, and hepatitis C was not isolated or named until 1989. So her telling Forrest, hey, doctors don't even have a name for it. They're not sure how to like diagnose it or deal with it. That's the illness or the virus that actually fits with that. So,
okay. That makes total sense then.
Although everyone in the world did assume it was HIV, but apparently it's not.
Well, that's cool.
Because I thought the same thing. I was like, man, poor Forrest. And then I read that and was like, well, I don't know what transmission is like for that stuff. So I'm going to assume Forrest is okay.
Yeah. That's what I choose to believe as well. The other nice thing she does before she bails, besides boning him, is she gives him shoes for like Christmas, I think.
Yep.
And so those shoes are like the shoes. So those are the filthy, dirty shoes you see at the very beginning. Yep. It's kind of you finally realize, oh, these are the shoes. They're important shoes to him, and so they are then the shoes he wears from then on, basically.
Well, and it's kind of funny because when you finally are shown the shoes, because you get the close up at the very beginning of the movie, and then he pulls them out, and it's very obvious, like, look, you should recognize these. And then he's, you realize, like, oh man, he's been wearing these shoes since.
Yeah.
It's a nice callback and foreshadowing, because you have no clue what he's doing on the bench except for waiting for bus number 9, but you have no clue where he's going, why he's doing it. And then you see the shoes, and it should be the, like, remember how he said you can tell a lot by a person? And one of the things is where they're going. You should put two and two together.
Yeah.
He's going to Jenny.
Yeah.
I don't know why I never caught it until this week when I was watching it. And when he pulled the shoe out of the box, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason he wears them from then on, is because they're a special gift from the person he loves most.
Yep.
And and they just make him remember her also.
And he at that juncture in his life, I think he's made peace with, or at least like a faith in, I'm always going to end up seeing Jenny. Somehow we are going to be together, whether it's a brief time period or for an extended one. No matter what, he's got this belief that Jenny will always be in his future. So I take the shoes as like he's wearing them not just because they're from her, but almost as a proof of his faith in like, I'm going to see her again.
Yeah. It's kind of gravity. They'll be drawn back together at some point.
Yeah. And then...
But after she leaves, it's so shattering that the house is so quiet. Like he had been happy for a very brief moment in time while she was there. And at the morning she leaves, and like he's like just goes from room to room and she's not there, and it's so quiet. And then he just sits on the porch and doesn't know what to do with it anymore. I think it's the first time that he kind of felt like heartbroken mostly. Like I think that he had certainly been let down by her not reciprocating his love, but I think that he did lay his whole heart on the line. He took a proactive move to ask her to marry him, and she said no, and then she left. Like that's a very heartbreaking thing to have happen.
And I always take that as him it's the first time like he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
The quiet is getting to him. He needs something to happen. He needs something to do because he's constantly been doing something for 20 years. 20 years. And this is another reason why I take him running throughout the whole movie as part of showing his change or his character evolution, because he chooses. I mean, he's sitting on the porch and he goes, for no reason at all, I just decided to run to the end of the driveway.
Yeah.
And then I figured I might as well run to the end of the town. Like, I like that it's not just the end of the street or just I'll run for a couple more blocks. It's like driveway, town, country.
Well, it's like county, state, and then it's like, and then I found myself at the ocean. I was like, whoa.
Right.
And then decided to turn around and go back. And my craziest part to me that I don't know if I fully grasped until watching it, because I was like paying attention. I was like, okay, how long has he been running? How far has he been running?
For a long time.
Like the news says he's been running for over 2 years. And then the next news, which is a different channel, and it may have happened years later, I don't know. She's like, he's run back and forth about 4 times. He's doing his like fourth over 4 times. And I'm like, holy crap. He's ran across the country, like only stopping to sleep and eat and stuff 4 times. And that's an insane thing to do, honestly.
It is insane. I think it's also very telling of where his mind was at. Because I take his huge run as his coping mechanism, and I think that's him like actually actively processing his life.
Exactly.
I really take that because, I mean, he lets himself get so disheveled, hairy, and just gross looking, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when he finally stops and he turns to everyone that has followed him now, and he's like, I'm tired. I think I'm going to go home. And then he doesn't run home. It's like a very healthy walk all of a sudden. I've always, especially after rewatching it this week, just very much, he finally processed everything, all the trauma, all the good things. He's put it all together. He's confronted it all himself. And now he's ready for the next. Now he's ready for take me wherever, waiting for taking the next breeze. Which is great because as soon as he finishes, then then you're finally told where he's going. Like just blatantly told.
Yeah. And I love that. I love during the run how he doesn't like nobody's following him until he starts like he's been doing it for a really long time at the point that he gets press coverage. People start just showing up who also are like missing, they're looking for meaning in their lives and they're looking for somebody else to give it to them. And I love when he turns around and that whole group has started following him and he says, I'm just going to go home. They are so disappointed. They were needing, I guess, a guru to give them something. And I think a guy even says, he's like, what are we supposed to do now?
Right. Yeah, it's very like, he wasn't doing this for you. I mean, this was a very
and he didn't give them any promises, or he didn't tell them, he didn't recruit them.
His most interaction with these runners that you're shown is like with the reporters or the couple, why are you doing this? I just felt like running. And then the guy who's running with him, or the two guys. So there's one that like gives him the shirt to wipe his face, and then you get the like, oh, the smiley face. Ha,
have a nice day.
Yeah. And then you get the, whoa, man, that was a big pile you just ran through. And he says, it happens.
Yeah. And the guy's like, what happened? Shit?
And he goes,
Sometimes.
It's, again, one of the little fun details that you're like, that makes so much sense. And it sums up Forrest's mentality at that point so well. Just like, shit happens.
If you run long enough, you're going to step in shit. That's part of life.
Forrest is so awesome. Yeah, his giant run is so entertaining if you just watch it for like the base of it. You know, oh, this guy's running for years now. And if you break it down, though, I really view his run as just, he's finally like, and that's his very mature moment of all the trauma, tragedy throughout life. I mean, he's seen not good things.
Yeah.
And so I view Jenny's rejection as very like, all right, I can't take any more. I need to actually actively process. And then you see him on the park bench and you realize it's not that long after the run.
Yeah.
He's very clean cut, fresh haircut. Everything's pristine except the shoes. And you're like, yes.
Yeah. And he tells the lady that he's like, he got the letter from Jenny to come see her and he needs to wait for this bus and go to this address. And she's like, well, that's just 8 or 9 blocks from here. And this is a guy who just ran across the country 4 times. And so he's like, okay, I'll just run there. No big deal.
And he just grabs his suitcase and bails.
Yeah, which I think is so sweet because he's obviously, even though he's been sitting on the bench forever, making the best of a situation that he has to wait a long time, he's obviously very excited to be able to go see her and will do, if he can do something to do it, see her faster, he will.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot.
Oh, yeah. And then, man.
Yeah, this is the most emotional part of the movie where he arrives at Jenny's apartment and she's there. She's, also clean cut, has a job working as a waitress.
Which is actually such a beautiful thing when he sees her. And it's so clear. There is no question. Her life is completely turned around.
It's the first time he's ever seen her at like her apartment. She has an apartment. She has a job. She's settled down. She's not just like in some guy's van or couch surfing or whatever. She's not in the wind. She's settled down. And I think that's cool.
She looks healthy. She's beautiful. Everything just seems so like inviting. Which she's very inviting. Especially
she invites him in, and one of the first things she tells him is she's like apologizing. She's like, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for like everything that I ever did to hurt you, and kind of making amends, I guess. And I think that's really cool. And then
the knock on the door shows up.
Yeah, and then her neighbor or friend shows up to drop off her son, and her son comes in and. Because her friend was taking care of him while she was at work. And when Forrest meets little Forrest, he learns that she's like, this is my son. His name is Forrest. And the way that whole interaction happens and the looks on Tom Hanks' face, again, going back to the incredible
freaking
subtlety.
Tom Hanks, man.
yeah, the subtlety and nuance in his facial features and reactions to things when he hears his name's Forrest and he gets excited that, oh, we share a name, that's cool. And then she's like, no, he's named after his daddy. He's like, oh, his dad's name's Forrest too? That's even cooler.
Right.
And
he's so like, hey, there's more.
slowly catching on that he is this kid's dad.
Yeah.
And he's like excited and then all of a sudden afraid that maybe like his son is also slow like he is.
Which is awesome that he's not put off with the news that he's a dad.
Right.
He's very afraid, but not because, oh, I have a child, apparently. He's afraid because his first question is he like me? Meaning, is he slow or like me?
Yeah, he's not at all going to like, he's not worried about the responsibility that this means. He really just wants this kid to be okay and happy and do well in school. And like, he just really cares about make sure that kid's okay, which is so genuine and beautiful.
Yeah. And then Jenny tells him like, no, he's one of the smartest kids in the class and he's doing great. He's healthy.
And he just like breaks down at that moment.
Right. Well, it's so incredible. So he has known this child for a minute.
Yeah.
And to hear how smart the kid is and how well he's doing, he looks so proud and so like just emotionally proud. And you're like, damn it, Tom Hanks, stop with the cry face. Tom Hanks has one of the greatest cry faces ever because you see it and you immediately are like, well, now I'm mush. Thanks, Tom. You're like, I can't hold this anymore.
Right.
But then like, I love how Forrest asks, oh, can I go like sit with him to watch Sesame Street?
Yeah. Can I go meet him?
And I love how Jenny's like, of course, go. They sit the exact same way and they have the same little head tilt as they're watching Bert and Ernie. And just that shot, you got Forrest and Little Forrest and Jenny's watching them from like the front entryway of her apartment. But that shot from behind them, it's such a simple, nothing special shot for a movie. But to me, it's so like, because they repeat that shot a few more times. Yeah. And it's like postcardy almost, but in a very genuine, like incredible, deeply meaningful way where you're like, nope, that's how it all should be. For every relationship is you should have that look of just it's so good. Oh my god, freaking love Forrest.
It's such a beautiful scene, and it's kind of the climax of the movie in a way. It's not like an exciting climax, but it is like the reason he was on the bench was to go there and meet them, and this whole new information has happened. His whole life has changed. Yeah. And it's beautiful. Yeah, he kind of like instantly, like he's always done, but now the stakes are higher because Jenny tells him, hey, Forrest, I'm sick. I just wanted to make sure you knew about Little Forrest. I like, please forgive me, all of her apologizing. Yeah. And I love how Forrest immediately is like, so this is the next step. This is the next, where is the breeze taking me? And he's just like, well, you and Little Forrest can come live with me on the house, at the house. And I have a family now. Yeah, this is what we're doing. And it's so beautiful. And that, Lieutenant Dan shows up for the wedding, which I already said was like, that's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Magic legs.
You got magic legs. It's so beautiful how like Forrest finally gets just this whole culmination of everything he's gone through, and now he's got a family. He's finally become the family man. And I love like all the little like things with him and Jenny and Little Forrest, and of course, then Jenny's sickness starts getting a little bit worse. Yeah. And that's when every human is just completely wrecked. Yeah. Because the line comes out of left field. Like he's serving her soup in bed.
Yeah.
And then you hear, "You died on a Tuesday." And you're just, no.
Yeah. It's honestly the most sad thing. And then you mentioned Tom Hanks' cry face when he's then at her grave, like giving her an update on how little Forrest is doing and what they do every day and how he reads him a book every night. And he's so smart, and all of the stuff that he's telling her is like so.
It's just, it keeps piling on the feels, and you're like, this needs to stop. And then he pulls out the freaking letter. I cannot make it past the letter where he's like, he wrote you a letter. He told me I'm not allowed to read it because it's for you. And he doesn't read it. It stays sealed, and he just places it every time. I'm like,
yeah, it's so perfectly Forrest, and it's so pure that he's, again, just going to keep his promise. He said he would. So he just sets it down, and it's for her, and it's so beautiful. And I love the message as he's like talking to her at that grave. He's also talking about like, he doesn't know if Mama was right or if Lieutenant Dan was right, and if you have a destiny that you should fulfill, or if you're just floating around in the world on a breeze. And then he says, maybe it was both. Maybe it's both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think everything about this movie is beautiful and amazing. And it's the reason that I love it so much.
Yeah, it's such a pure film. Like it really is one of the most beautiful movies. It does, him getting to send little Forrest to school, and it's the same bus driver who's now chewing bubble gum and not smoking on the school bus.
Yeah.
And they have the same kind of interaction-ish. I forget, he says her name, and he goes, "And I'm Forrest Gump."
Yeah.
And
it's like his dad has prepared him for it. He's like,
yeah.
Okay, so Dorothy Harris is going to pick you up. Don't be worried. You're not going to be strangers.
And I love that, like, little Forrest was taking Forrest's childhood book, Curious George, for show and tell, and the feather falls out, and that's how the book end.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful movie, and the music at the very end is so, it's just like, and perfection. It's no wonder the movie won like every award possible.
Yeah. As bogus as awards can be, I think they did a very
sometimes
good job
they
with this
hit
one.
it right out of the park, and Forrest Gump is one of those times. It's such
Sometimes a movie is so good that you can't ignore it.
Yeah, it's such a profound film. And watching it this week, I know I've said this several times before, but there are certain movies that just like, man, this should almost be required viewing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And Forrest Gump is one of those because it's just so heartfelt and genuine, and it does pack a huge punch, but it's not like so sad that you feel helpless when it ends. I mean, you're still heartbroken, but when it ends, you can walk out of the room or go into the world, and you kind of have that like, okay, what would Forrest do? Almost kind of mentality. And Forrest Gump is one of those movies. There's nothing wrong with the movie.
Yeah, it is pretty perfect.
It's everything.
I was just looking. It's number 12 of IMDb's top rated movies.
Yeah.
So that's pretty telling.
It's just such a, if you need a movie to humanize or remind you what it means to be human, Forrest Gump is right up there. If not the movie you should watch to learn that.
Yeah, it has such a great overall message. And like I said at the beginning, a pretty gentle message that you can watch the movie and enjoy it as a kid or just a person who's not really into certainly preachy movies. It's not preachy. It's just a movie that is so nice but also so deep. If you do want meaning, and if you look for meaning in life, you'll find meaning in this movie for sure. It's a very deep and one of the more powerful movies. I think does a good job of showing the power of film too, because it shows you how powerful, a good representation, I guess, of the human experience through a very long time condensed into just a couple of hours.
Yeah. But man, what a great movie. I know I texted you, like I watched it. I forget what night I put it in or what day I put it in. It was right before I was getting ready to go to work, and I watched it in the morning. And I was like, it ended, and I just sat on the couch and was like, oh my God. And it's like, I sent you the text. They're just like, God damn, it's just so good. It's just so good.
It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. It's no wonder that it's like your favorite movie of all time. I do find it kind of funny that it's your favorite movie of all time, because typically movies that are like heavily dramatic or heavily relational are not completely up your alley or that you gravitate towards. So I think it's very funny that this is the one that like, nope, that's it.
Yeah. I generally don't gravitate towards movies that make me feel a lot of feels, but this one does the job. And when I do see them, I do like them. I don't put them on for fun. This one I tend to put on when I want to feel good or when I'm sick or whatever. It's just like, I can always put it on. It always makes me happy.
Oh yeah. I think we all have those kinds of movies. I probably have too many, but
yeah. So that's Forrest Gump.
So that's our dive into Forrest Gump.
So let us know what you think. If you saw it, what message you took away from it. If we missed anything, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we probably didn't get to. We're going to be talking about some other movies in the future here. And so we've been seeing new releases now that we finally got done with all of our Marvel movies in the last episode. Had time to see some new movies.
Technically, I'm actually done with my Marvel movies.
That's
true. Behind one.
That's true. I caught up finally. I finally saw Captain Marvel and then immediately fell behind again because I haven't seen Black Widow yet. But yeah, I'm gonna see Black Widow. You've already seen Black Widow. We'll be putting up a YouTube review of it in the future, so check that out. I'm sure it'll go up before the next podcast episode.
And I'm aiming to get the Tomorrow War watched, which you saw, and I have not had a chance to see yet. So we'll put one up for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw. You have to see Nobody also.
Yep, and I need to see Nobody.
And and Spiral. I saw Spiral.
Oh yeah, and Spiral.
So if you get around to that,
I will try.
So yeah, we'll be putting up new reviews. Obviously, we'll do a new episode next week.
Yep.
Deep diving another movie. I'm liking these deep dives, so we're gonna do I think these for a little bit.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
What do we decide on for next week?
I don't think we actually decided the movie, but we'll get. It'll be a gem no matter what. I know that.
It will be a gem. Well, we have a couple of options, but we're narrowing it down.
Yeah.
What you should do is, if you want to know what it is, we'll be putting it up on our Instagram and Facebook page. So go to @MovieBoners on Facebook and Instagram, kind of on Twitter, but not really. And and you'll see an update there. So you can leave comments, you can call in with your opinions, and you'll find out what our next movie is so you can be ready for the next episode.
Yep. And that's it, right?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure we got it all.
As far as I know. Cool. If I forget, it probably didn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with the flow. I'm just gonna live my life on a breeze, and that's
all we got to say about that.
Exactly. Nice. Well done. Nailed it. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.